Welcome to the Beyond the Medallion podcast, where we interview U.S. presidential scholars to hear about their unique and compelling journeys through life after receiving the medallion. I'm Thomas Wills II, a computer engineering bachelor's and master's student at the Rochester Institute of Technology. I also serve as a communications manager for the U.S. Presidential Scholars Foundation. My guests today are our very first scholar couple on the podcast, Ilana Walder-Biesanz and Ellen Liu. Ilana, a 2009 scholar from Oregon, has built an incredibly diverse career path. With degrees spanning engineering, literature, and business, she's transitioned from working in big tech to management consulting. And she currently serves as the CEO of the national education nonprofit National Math Stars. Ellen, a 2010 scholar from Texas, started her career as an energy investment banker before moving to work for a power company in corporate development and investor relations, and recently moving again to a commodities firm where she has returned to her deal-making roots. Alana and Ellen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us. We're excited to chat. Yeah, this is awesome.
Cool. So you both have a pretty interesting origin story when it comes to how you met. So Alana, you're a 2009 scholar. Ellen, you're a 2010 scholar. So you guys didn't actually meet during the National Recognition Program. So how did you guys cross paths?
So we met when we were both doing our MBAs at Stanford Business School. Ellen was the year above me, so she was a cool upperclassman. And actually, at my admitted students weekend, when everyone comes to campus and they try to persuade you that you definitely want to enroll, they had Ellen give a speech, which was her life story. It's something that at Stanford they call a talk. And so she didn't know me at all. I'm sitting in the front row hearing her bare her soul about all of the most dramatic and traumatic moments in her life. And A, she's had a very interesting life, and B, she's a very compelling speaker. So, I was pretty hooked. Obviously, we didn't immediately get together. That didn't come until I was on campus and we met properly, but that was technically how we first met.
Well, and what a great way for us to meet with me having this super polished version of myself so that I can trick her before she realizes how much of a dork I really am.
That's hilarious. Did you guys meet like that first year, or was it a little farther along, or
It was her first year, my second year,
yeah.
right at the beginning of your first year. So after that whole talk, the school year starts, and I am doing this class project that requires interviewing students. And it's a class project about wine. So I put out this broad call for potential interviewees, and Ilana responds to it. And so we ended up having, what was supposed to be a 20-minute interview about wine became this 90-minute sprawling conversation about our families and about what we like to do and all these different things. And I think the cool part is that we got the chance to be friends first for the first, 3 months that we knew each other before we started dating. And being friends on a school campus is the equivalent of, it's like a supercharged version of doing it in real life because you see each other all the time. And so we really, really got to get like know each other very quickly.
Yeah, yeah, that's been one of my favorite parts about college. It's like completely different from high school, or I even feel like
Yeah.
outside of anywhere else. It's almost like you live with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so Ellen, let's start with your career. So you have carved out a pretty focused path for yourself in finance within the energy industry. So what has been the biggest advantage of staying dialed into one specific industry over the course of your career?
So I think the biggest thing, which I am not realizing and fully until now, is that you people don't really leave an industry. And so the network that you build, and in addition to the kind of knowledge that you gain, really, really is additive over time. And so I think about these young kids that I started at my investment bank with, and when we first started, the senior people at our bank sat us down and said, "Okay, kids, look around you. The people that you're surrounded by now are going to be the energy leaders of tomorrow." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, whatever. I've heard that a billion times. Like I heard that at my commencement like at my college graduation just a few weeks ago, move along." But it's proven to be true. You fast forward just, I don't know, how long has it been since I graduated? Oh God,
12 years, 13 years, something
13
like
years of
that.
sad face. So you fast forward 13 years, and there are some of my classmates are CFOs, or some of my classmates, like some of my banker mates are CFOs at energy companies, or they have gone on to be super senior finance people at investment firms. And I myself am in a super interesting seat where we have control over capital or over decision-making power. And the fact that we know each other and trust each other from years of working together is really starting to bear fruit. So I think that is perhaps the most interesting and, to me, fulfilling part of having invested so much time in this industry that, to be honest, I could have invested that time in any industry. I find a lot of industries interesting. Because I happen to be from Houston, energy is just quite literally, well, not literally, I suppose figuratively in my blood. My mom works for a big oil and gas company, for example.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I that's definitely something I hear time and time again about the people that you're with now. If you stick to it, they're going to be the leaders of tomorrow. Not something I've been able to personally see, so it's nice to hear that it is true.
You have a little time, and then
Yeah.
soon the tree will grow.
Cool. Yeah. Ilana, your path has pretty much been the complete opposite. You have degrees in engineering, literature, and business. You've pivoted from industry to industry, and currently you're running National Math Stars. So, what drives your desire to pivot, and how have you known in the past when it's time to make a leap into a new field?
Oh, that's a good question. I Sometimes I joke that I'm indecisive because I have so many interests. I don't think it's truly indecision. I think the pivots have been driven pretty naturally, and I think each one has been different. I started my career in big tech because that was kind of where everybody went after an engineering degree, especially at that time, right? That was who was hiring and where all of the exciting jobs were. And product management was a really exciting job. It was a job that had a lot of autonomy for a new grad. And it took a few years in big tech to realize that I actually just didn't love working in tech. I had really enjoyed studying engineering, but that's different than working in tech day to day.
Yeah,
And so that first pivot was largely driven by searching for what I would enjoy more and what I did want to build a career in. And that pivot came through business school. As many people who don't know what comes next do, business school is a good way to have 2 years both to explore and to gain new skills. I had a hypothesis. I'd been getting very involved in nonprofits on the side, and I had this hypothesis that I wanted to go more deeply into nonprofit work. And I had like no relevant skills, right? My degrees at that point were in engineering and in literature. I didn't really know anything about running a nonprofit.
yeah,
So business school was a way to gain the skills to potentially make another move. And then consulting to running a nonprofit was actually not that big of a change. I did most of my consulting work with nonprofits and social impact orgs because I was very focused on that and really like bullied staffing at Bain into letting me do a lot of those projects. And so it was a change in role, right? Going from being a consultant to actually starting and running an org myself, but it wasn't
yeah.
so much a change in industry.
Ah, okay, that's really interesting. So, in that change, in the most recent change, because I'm personally curious about that. What would you say? You said that they're both kind of similar. What would you say was the most beneficial difference for you?
Ooh, I mean, the most beneficial difference, I think, is going from working for a team of partners and ultimately for a client and being a strategic advisor who largely doesn't get to implement projects
Hmm.
to working for myself, I mean, my board, but not really having anyone to make the calls other than me, and having to implement and live with everything I do. And that makes it sound like there's a lot more pressure, and in some sense there is, right? I make the decisions for myself and then I'm stuck with the direction that takes my team and my organization.
Yeah.
But I think in many ways it was also the best change, right? There's that feeling of much more control and autonomy that comes with that. And there's also a ton more learning, I think, that comes when you do execute on and live with your own strategic business decisions.
Yeah, it gives you a lot of opportunity to kind of pivot and play around with things, I feel like. I mean,
Yeah,
with the high stakes, maybe not quite as much as if it was a lower stakes thing, but
you really get to develop your judgment, though. You're not making suggestions and then seeing what someone else decides. You're
yeah.
deciding.
Oh, yeah, that's true because yeah, because in the usual corporate world, like there's so many other people that have a say, but when you're really at the at the front of it, that makes sense. Interesting. So I think it's valuable for younger scholars to hear that both of your approaches work very well. I feel like in my experience, in my generation, I've seen a lot of people kind of quarrel with how they should go about things and like that there's one way that works for everybody, and that's not true. So you've both taken completely different paths, and yet you're both very successful, and seems like you guys are pretty happy as well. Um,
We both
so
really like our jobs right now.
Right
that's
now.
great. That's great. Ideally, that's how everyone should be. I mean, especially if you're paying for a college degree. Um, so I'm curious how you guys balance each other out and like with that, like what can our listeners learn from seeing both of your methods in action?
Interesting question. Balance each other out in our personal lives or our in our approaches to our career?
I mean, I feel like it's kind of like as a whole, like I do think that there's a separation between like professional life and personal life, but I feel like there's also overlap in that.
Yeah,
And
for
I
sure.
feel like the way you go about your career is also reflective of your personality as well. So,
Hmm.
I mean, you guys can take as long as you need to like sit on that question, but
I mean, I think one thing people can learn is exactly what you pointed out, right? That there are lots of paths to career happiness, and we've taken different ones, and friends of ours have taken different ones from either of ours, and many of us have ended up in places we're very happy with. And that you can't really map it all out from the start. Like, if you'd asked either of us a decade ago what we'd be doing, we would have given you very wrong answers. Even Ellen, who has stayed within energy, would not have guessed at the different roles she has taken on within energy. In fact, I don't, the job you have now, you probably didn't know existed as a job 10 years ago.
Yep.
Similarly, the job I have now didn't exist as a job because this nonprofit is only 3 years old. So I think one of the takeaways is that there's not pressure to figure out your like life career plan or even your 10-year career plan in advance. Some sense of direction probably helpful, but like over engineering it is not going to do any good and not important.
I think to speak as well to how it is without a doubt a fact that Ilana has been additive to my career. And for me, career is one of the most important pillars of my life. So when I think about, you can own, I have this dorky pillar structure for the way that I think of my life. And the pillars are career, friends, family, and relationship. And all four of those are important. But when I think about like where I want to be the most ambitious, it is very healthily in the career realm. Now, in the past, when I have made decisions about my career, it has been some combination of research and vibes, going heavily towards the vibes element. But in meeting Ilana and dating her and marrying her, I have been able to add much more structure to the way I think about this decision because she is, as you can probably tell, an incredibly structured and logical thinker. And I think to make effective career decisions, you have to have a mix of both. Having too much structure gives you analysis paralysis. Having too much passion means that you make rash decisions and jump out of jobs that might otherwise have been a good fit if you had simply just waited and become more experienced.
mm,
And so when I think about how this feeds into the overarching way that I think about my career, at this stage, I am now just solving for happiness and not being bored. I think that that overarching goal is the way that I will be keeping a healthy mindset in whatever it is I am doing. So then it doesn't matter. That's how I can say, well, I don't have to be extra passionate about the industry I am in or the like company that I'm doing it for. As long as I am happy and consistently curious about the work that I'm doing, then that is enough. Which seems like it is simple, but it is actually not, because there are a lot of factors that feed into it. Here's the structured part, right? There are things like, do you find the work itself generally stimulating? But then also, perhaps even more importantly, is the team that is surrounding you a team that is going to be supportive? And is your manager going to be encouraging of your future development? And so I think this is another thing that Ilana has helped me with. I will no longer settle for like a career that doesn't fulfill these elements, particularly in the team element. Like I used
Good
to
for
be able to
you.
settle and just say, yeah, like I'll put up with these people, and no, you shouldn't have to put up with someone with whom you are spending more than 8 hours per day. So I think these are the ways in which, when you talk about how we balance each other out, she has helped me gain more of a sense of confidence in my own, like, the own value that I bring to the job, and thus in the fact that I deserve to find, ask for, and receive a team and a job that treats me right and is consistently interesting.
Wow. Yeah. It seems like you guys help each other quite a bit with that aspect of your lives, and that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ellen, I want to touch on your time in business school. You mentioned in our pre-recording call we had that while academics come easily to you, coming out of the closet during that time and navigating your identity in the corporate world was pretty intense. So, how were you able to stay true to yourself while building your career in finance?
Yeah, okay. This is going to be a multi-part answer, like many of my answers are.
Yeah, that's okay. It's
Um,
a pretty loaded question, so.
but I love talking about this topic. So when I think about why I went to business school, I was a deferred admit. So I actually had applied in college and didn't go until 4 years later. And the
Oh,
reason why I applied and the reason why I went were quite different. The reason I applied was because that was very honestly just the thing to do. When I think about, I grew up in this Chinese family. My dad and my mom were very good about pushing me to be ambitious in my career, and they had this whole roadmap planned out. They said, "Great, you like finance? Awesome. Investment banking, great place to start. Okay, then from there, top business school. Then from there, question mark, question mark, question mark, CFO." Like that was the plan. So that was why I applied. But 4 years later, I realized that I really needed to get out of Houston, and into unfamiliar territory and
mm,
into safe territory for me to be able to be true to myself. And that included coming out of the closet. And so doing so in California and at Stanford was perhaps the best possible environment in which to explore your identity, both because the community was incredibly welcoming, and I've made some of my closest friends as part of my business school community. I absolutely loved my experience there, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. And also because it just was business school is an incredibly indulgent exercise in self-reflection, or it can be, and it was for me.
Especially at Stanford.
Yes,
They're very big on the woo-woo self-reflection side of
vulnerability.
things.
how so? I'm curious.
Stanford was now a lot of business schools have adopted this, but Stanford premiered this class called Interpersonal Dynamics, which everyone calls
Touchy-feely.
touchy-feely, which is literally just people like sitting in circles talking about their reactions to things and to each other and their own like social dynamics and all of that. But there's a lot of other classes too at Stanford that are very much how do you manage the people side of managing people? How do you handle
Yeah,
tough
yeah.
conversations? How do you balance life with work? How do you think about the power dynamics underlying business and a career? So there's just a lot of that. Like, yes, they have classes in finance and accounting and all of that, but like that's not what people go to Stanford GSB for. People go to Stanford GSB for the woo-woo feelings stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense because in order to like be a good leader, you kind of have to know what kind of leader you are, and I guess that
It's a very good way to
self-discovery
put it.
part does seem pretty important. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, well, that they go for that, and then they go for the network that you don't really realize that you can tap into like 5 or 6 to 10 years later, It's
Of
Yeah,
incredible,
that's
course.
awesome.
etc. Blah blah blah.
But anyway,
But
sorry,
anyway,
I
so
interrupted
yes,
you.
to actually finish the question, that was part one of my answer. Season two is um, I, when I graduated. So this is going to be a meandering answer because I actually haven't thought about it that much, but
That's
I'm
okay.
going to try to keep it crisp. So when I graduated, I was seized with this desire to like make a difference in the company that I was going to. Basically, I went back to the investment bank that I was in before Stanford, and I
Ooh,
really wanted to endure as one of the few queer people, one of the few women in that space. And what I learned after a couple of years is that being a martyr in that way, in a space where you have to like maybe sacrifice other parts of yourself. Like, for example, an investment banking career is incredibly intense, and I was just like consistently unhappy, not because of the any issues that I faced for my identity, but simply because it was a ton of work and it was really intense. I should have taken that more into account versus kind of obstinately saying, "Oh no, I'm gonna hang on because I must be the token in this space." And so I think since then, my philosophy is my identity is an important part of who I am at work, but it is not the only part. And so as I become more comfortable with the fact that I am like a queer person, then I think it has enabled me to just slot that in more naturally in my conversations at work and to really not care how people respond. And I find that when you do that, when you are comfortable in yourself, even if you're in energy and notoriously, let's just say, I think a lot of people have a certain impression of what it's like. I find that has not been true at all. People have been incredibly welcoming and friendly and happy to have me in the spaces. And it thus makes me more excited to like stay in those spaces, right? So it all goes back to the thing that I was saying before, which is you have to find the company or job where you are going to show up as your best self. If you do that, you people's best selves are the most charismatic versions of themselves too, and so people will want to be around that, and I think your identity will naturally be able to shine versus trying to force it to do so.
wow. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. To me, it was really cool to hear about how essentially like as you got more comfortable with yourself, your that part of your identity just became like a part of the bigger picture of yourself, which allowed it to shine, I feel like even more. Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
that's how I interpreted that. That's really awesome.
Well, and the last thing I'll say on this is one of the most eye-opening moments for me actually is I the one of my old bosses who is the like prototypical person you think of when you think about an energy person, right? Like a man in his 50s, white, tall, deep voice, intimidating.
Great golf game.
Yeah, really great golf game.
Yeah,
His
that sounds
one piece of
about right.
advice to me was to start playing golf when I asked him how I can climb the ladder more effectively, and he meant it seriously. Um,
Wow.
this man, I asked him for feedback one day, and first he chuckled and called me a millennial, and then he sat me down and he said, "Well, Ellen, are you comfortable with being gay?" And it's incredibly vulnerable of him to ask this question because it's a professional environment. He's like a big time executive, and he has to really trust that, like, I am going to trust that he has good intentions. So I said, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "Really? Because it doesn't seem like that to me." And I said, "What are you talking about? I talk about it all the time." And he was like, "Exactly. You talk about it all the time." And he said, "I don't want to say this in a way that will hurt you because I don't mean it in a hurtful way, but it just seems like you are not sitting well with yourself. And that's why you feel the need to always bring it up and check that the spaces you are in are comfortable with you being queer." And that was huge for me. No one had ever said that to me. And I think it really helped to me turn the corner of saying, "You're right. I need to own who I am." as I am comfortable sitting being like this like badass energy person, I need to be comfortable being this badass queer person as well.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool. I'm glad he had that conversation with you.
Yeah.
So you talked some about how like high stress that work environment can be. How have you managed to protect your personal life while still climbing the ladder? And Alana, you can feel free to chime on this too, because I know you've been all over the place, but there's still a lot of climbing in that process.
Yes, Ellen was pointing to me when you said, "How have you managed to protect your personal life?" Not because I have the answer, but because I think her answer is me. I have throughout my career been very committed to protecting life for things outside of work. I'm very active with my side hustles, which include writing about and performing in theater and opera.
Ooh.
And I have a lot of hobbies, and those are all very important to me. And so I've always said, I'm going to get the work done as efficiently as possible, but evenings and weekends are for other things in my life that I care about. And I don't think Ellen had that philosophy at all. And I don't think that was possible in investment banking. I think when she was in investment banking, that's not something that they can respect. But I think once she met me and saw me doing that, and also then once she got out of investment banking, it provided some motivation and just like proof that that was possible, right? That my career trajectory was still going strong and I was getting promotions and getting new and exciting roles, despite that protection of a personal life. So it required her to leave investment banking, but I think I helped show that there were areas and ways she could make that happen for herself. And I think with some subsequent career moves, she largely has.
That's 100% true. I think that I got the first, like a teaser trailer for a movie. I got a teaser of this idea while I was in business school because I got to meet so many people from around the world who had carved out incredibly successful careers while putting in very highly varying amounts of work. There were
Hmm.
some people like me who had been career obsessed since day one and worked 80-hour weeks. And there were people who, like Ilana, worked 40-hour weeks for a tech company. And here we are at the same place with the same amount of self-confidence and competence. And so that was very eye-opening. But then hearing an idea and actually being able to implement it are two totally different things. And it required a fundamental rewiring of the values of my life, which happened when I met Ilana and realized that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. I thought, okay, I need to
Aw.
rearrange my priorities in a way that I can, aw, obligatory aw, in a way that we can make that happen. And for her, for some strange reason, spending time with me was a really important part of that. So, and for me as well. So I came out of Stanford a fundamentally different person. And so when I re-entered that same company that I had left, they hadn't changed much, but I had. And so that's what led me to say, okay, you know what? There's more out there than this traditional finance path. Let's go see what else there is. And since then, as I said, it's been a combo of just exploration, research and vibes to decide what to do next. But I think it's all been guided by this North Star that, okay, now what's more important to me are the relationships I care about in my life, like my wife, my family, my friends.
That
Wow, yeah,
first year
that's
when she
awesome.
was back in investment
Oh, that was
banking
rough.
was bad
Oh,
though.
that was bad.
I was still at Stanford, so I would come visit her in
Uh,
Houston for the weekend, and we would literally sit in her office at the bank all weekend, and she would work. And then at like 7 p.m. on Saturday, I would be like, I'm dragging you away. We're going out to dinner. And then after dinner, we'd go back to the
oh
office.
my gosh, she is. Um, okay, this is kind of a random question, just a personal curiosity. What does an 80-hour work week like actually look like? Like, it doesn't mean like 6 days a week, 7 days a week, like,
Oh, yeah, good question. So, yes, a lot of people love to say, oh, I toughed through an 80-hour work week. So, really, what it looks like is working from, let's just say, 9 in the morning. So, on the weekdays, you work from like 9 to 3 a.m. pretty consistently. I don't know how many hours that is. I guess that's already like 12 plus. Where's my Excel? Where's my Excel?
That's 18
That's
hours.
18 hours times 5. Does that already get us to it's 90 already, right?
Yeah, you weren't doing that 5 days a
Okay,
week.
so you do that 4 days a week. Friday is a little bit more demure, so you work maybe like 9 to 7. Then, because Friday evening to Saturday day is kind of sacred, quote unquote. And then Sunday we would often work most of the day. So that's how you get to like 80 to 100 hours. The thing is, like most people can do that for a concentrated period of time, but if you're working for a bank or sometimes a consultant, like a financial services firm, you have multiple clients. And so while one client may be cooling off, another client may be heating up. And so it just becomes a consistent rolling 80 to 100. And man, once you're past your 20s, that's very hard.
I could never have done that. I am one of those people who needs 8 hours of sleep every night without fail, or I do not
Yeah,
function.
I will say I
Yeah,
have
me
napped
too.
in lots of interesting places. Like I've napped in a conference room, I've napped in my car, I've napped under my
Yeah, under
desk.
the desk, classic.
Well, I'm very glad you were able to get away from that because I don't know. I feel like that just like start chipping away at my soul. Like,
It does. And I think like have you ever seen The Dark Knight?
yes, yeah, I have.
Dark
Yes,
Knight,
Where are you
The
going with
Dark Knight
this?
Rises,
I have
or The
no
Dark Knight.
idea.
It's the one where Harvey Dent says you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. So I thought about this all the time during my years in banking.
You're like, have I become a villain yet?
That's right.
Oh
I
wow.
was born in the darkness. Anyway, but to anybody who may be thinking about a career in investment banking, I actually say that for the first 2 to 3 years, right out of school, it is very worth it. And it is very worth it because of, I would say, two primary reasons. One, three primary reasons. One, you do develop a really strong financial modeling skill set and great attention to detail when it comes to presentations and stuff. That's very valuable. It's actually helping me a lot in my job now, which I never thought I would have to touch those things again. Two, you do test yourself and test your mettle for how tough you can physically be, just putting up with the intense work hours and the strong personalities. And three, you become very hard to impress. And I think that latter thing is a very important, like, sense of confidence to develop early in your career because you're working around high dollar figure transactions and working with CEOs at big time companies. And so next time anyone tries to name drop someone on you, like you're just like, okay, cool, been
Yeah,
there, done that. And that I think is important to
yeah, to
develop.
help like level the mental playing field of the
Exactly.
job. Yeah,
Yeah,
Exactly.
you're not going to be overawed by CEOs or millionaires or
And
anything.
by smoke and mirrors too. Smoke and mirror tactics.
yeah, yeah. There's definitely a lot of those.
Oh yeah, you better bet.
Okay, so Alana, I would love for you to talk a little bit more about your current role leading National Math Stars. So obviously, I'd love to hear more about the role itself, but then also I'm curious how all the past pivots and the degrees that you've gotten over the years, how you feel like that prepared you to step into that leadership position.
Yeah, so I started National Math Stars 3 years ago, and it was a somewhat fortuitous convergence of circumstances. I was consulting at the time. I was not looking to leave yet at the time. And in the Slack for the alumni of a fellowship I had won years earlier, someone posted that this philanthropic funder was looking for an entrepreneur in residence to start a math talent search. And this caught my attention partly because I'd been a really mathematically advanced kid growing up. And so I knew that that was a hard ecosystem for parents to navigate, and knew that it was probably even harder for parents who had fewer resources than mine did. And so I saw that there was a need and that there were not really organizations out there helping to find and support these kids. And as I mentioned, I've been doing a lot of work with nonprofits at Bain. I had known since business school that that was probably the direction I wanted to go.
Mm,
And this was just like an incredibly unique nonprofit opportunity. When do people say, we want to hire someone to start a nonprofit and we're going to pre-commit to like, yeah, assuming the basic hypotheses work out, to like putting lots of long-term funding behind this nonprofit. You can start a nonprofit and not just be like begging for money for your first few years, which is what most people who start nonprofits have to do.
Yeah, it's like
And
a
it's
once in
hard.
a
It doesn't
lifetime
sound very fun.
opportunity.
So yeah, like super unique opportunity. Funnily enough, I originally sent it to Ellen because she was having a little bit of a career like crisis moment at the time and kept saying, I think I want to do something in education. And I was like, well, here's something cool in education. And she was like, Ilana, I don't want to start and run a company or a nonprofit.
Too
That
much
is
work.
so not my skills. I'm a finance girl, not an ops girl. No, you should do this. I was like, oh yeah, you're totally right. I should do this. So I dropped a resume and ended up getting hired for that entrepreneur in residence role, which is a little bit crazy because on paper I did not have most of the background they were looking for. But I actually do think that the other things I had done had given me the skill set that they were looking for, right? Like at Bain, I had reached the point where I was a manager and I was leading teams doing strategic projects, which gave a lot of those like people management reps that you need to hire and run a team. And also once in consulting you reach the point of leading projects, you're doing a lot more of the judgment calls and decision making, and that becomes really important when you're running your own organization as well. I think the product management background was also really relevant and useful because when you're crafting a program for students and parents, so much of it is about what is the experience going to be for people in the program. And in product management, that is the question you're constantly obsessed about, right? Like, what is the experience going to be for the user? How do we make that easier, better, more engaging? And so I think those two mindsets of like strategic business, understanding the ops and finance, understanding managing people, and how do I stay obsessed with like what actually being a part of this is like and keep that like central was a really good combination. And then on top of that, I had my own experiences growing up, and so could have a lot of empathy with these students and families. So I think it really all came together well. And yeah, it's turned out to be a wonderful journey. So National Math Stars looks for and supports kids long term who are extraordinary at math. We look for kids in second and third grade. We give out math awards through school districts or state DOEs to top performing kids. And those math awards come with an invitation to apply to our STARS programs, which
Ooh.
is long term 10 years of wraparound support. We make sure you have community, mentorship, you know, sort of what the advanced classes at your level are. We make sure you know what the cool summer opportunities and STEM enrichment opportunities are. And then, depending on your level of family need, we'll also fund those things for you to make sure that they're accessible. So it's kind of exactly the program that I wish my parents had had and that I hope that every sort of really advanced young mathematician can have. And 3 years ago, it was just me trying to figure out how do we launch this pilot? What do we do? Um, and now we're like 22 people, I think. It's
Wow.
gonna be 30 by this fall, which is a little bit crazy. And yeah, we're working with 400 something kids, and we're gonna accept more than 500 more in August. So it's
Wow.
growing really, really fast. In terms of
Okay.
number of kids we're working with, in terms of budget, in terms of team. And that's just been a really cool experience to be part of and to be driving. And both the inside the work of like hiring a team, expanding the budget, all of the organizational work of that I found really interesting. And also it's just really cool to see all of these new amazing kids that we're finding and see the impact that the program can have on them and how excited and relieved parents are to find this resource.
Yeah, wow. That's really awesome. When it comes to like I know you had mentioned like math awards and a few other things. When it comes to things like that, how do you guys partner with the school districts? Do you guys like reach out to them or do the school districts have to find you?
Yeah, we reach out to them. So we have an outreach team that goes to conferences, and we're in 10 states right now. So in conferences in all of the states that we're in, and also does cold emailing and calling and tries to get as many districts as possible to participate in the program because that's how we find kids. And particularly, that's how we find kids whose parents might not find us, right? It's great
Yeah.
if a parent knows their kid is super advanced and is searching for things and finds us. But we're especially interested in finding the kids whose parents might not even know that they should be looking for or what to search for. And schools are a really great, trusted outlet for that. If a school says to a kid and a parent, hey, your kid is like really advanced, they're ready for something more, and they give the kid a medal because that's part of the Math Awards program, it really reinforces like, no, follow up on this. And then the letter they get with that medal makes it very clear sort of how they can follow up on that. So it really helps us reach those families that might not already find us.
Wow, that's awesome. Being in 10 states in just 3 years is amazing.
Yeah, it's been really fast, and
Yeah.
we're adding a lot more in 2027, so the growth is not slowing down anytime soon.
Wow, well, best of luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right, so at this point, we're starting to wrap things up a little bit. As kind of a final question, I'd like to ask you guys both the same question. So, looking back at the people that you were when you received your medallions in 2009 and 2010, respectively, what is one piece of advice you would give to your younger selves? You can sit on that for as long as you need to. It's another loaded
Hmm.
question.
I think I would say go ahead and do all the things that sound really fun. Like don't agonize over decisions. If something sounds like an incredible experience and it is possible to do, don't worry about if it doesn't fit into a plan or a path or what you've been doing so far. Take the opportunity. I think I spent a lot of time. I think I did do this, but I think I spent a lot of time overthinking. Like, oh, if I take this like fellowship to Europe and go study like literature and theater for a few years after my engineering degree, how does that fit into getting a job afterwards? What do I do? And like, no, every time I just went and did it, it was the right choice. Yes, I was living on like a poverty level Fulbright stipend. They don't give you like any money. And just like bopping around Germany with no plan whatsoever. But like it worked out, right? The engineering degree was still there afterwards, and I'm so glad I have the had those experiences, and that's what sort of like launched my side hustle career in writing professionally about opera. And so I think every time especially when I was very young, like take the risk, don't really worry about how it fits into the grand plan. All of those experiences will be additive to who you are as a person.
Cool. Yeah, I that personally is a very good piece of advice for me and a lot of the people I know in college right now. I feel like especially with the way the job industry has been with STEM fields, that people have felt the need to really just like try and hone in and lock things in and figure things out. But it's nice to hear that if you kind of just go with where your heart takes you, then you kind of build things up along the way.
Yeah, and of course, there's like a lot of privilege in that. You can't always afford to just go with where your heart takes you. But
Yeah.
my takeaway would be if you can, just do it and don't worry too much about where it's going to take you like 3 years later or 5 years later.
So Ilana stole my answer and my initial
Oh
answer.
no, I'm sorry.
But don't worry, because I have another reference for you. Have you ever seen Hamilton?
Okay. No, I
So,
have not, but my girlfriend, she is like a diehard fan. We still need to see it together.
okay, well, first of all, you need to definitely get on Disney Plus and watch the pro shot with the original cast because it is like amazing and possibly the best version of Hamilton that you can watch. Second of all, if you're going to see it live, do not take a weed gummy beforehand. May or may not be speaking from personal experience. Oh my gosh. Okay,
I'm
third of
really
all,
curious how that would change it.
do I remember anything about the first time I ever saw Hamilton live? I don't know, debatable, okay? But the thing that I'm thinking of is when Aaron Burr tells Hamilton, talk less, smile more. So my version of that would be work less, hobby more. And what I mean by that is don't lose sight of the childhood hobbies that gave you joy. And in fact, spend time, whether it's in college or early in your life, cultivating and leaning into those. That's what I saw Ilana do to great effect today because that investment is really flowering in once you like have a job and have real money to spend, you can take those hobbies to the next level and get extra levels of fulfillment out of them. But I kind of wish that I had continued the investment of things like I really enjoyed rock climbing as a child, and I really enjoyed playing video games and like thinking about video games, and I really enjoyed scary movies. And those are all hobbies that I lean into now, but I wish I had spent the time because today I'm at a place where, man, I'm an adult, I have the skill set and the money. I really want to learn how to make a video game or film a scary movie or act in a play. But I have to start more from ground zero of just being a consumer or being like a trainee because I dropped those hobbies when I was younger. Or I really want to sing in a musical, but the hobby of choir I like dropped when I was in high school. So I think there's not just this sense of regret, but also this sense that your brain needs a break. And if you're a smart, driven person, which I think a lot of the audience members of your podcast are, chances are their brain is strong enough to do the work and have the fun and still have everything be just fine. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I had such a chokehold on my future when I was younger, such a chokehold on the way that I allocated my time because I thought if I didn't devote 100% to building a successful job, I would not be where I am today. And having now spent some time, I think that there are some industries where you do have to be top of the game every single time. You want to be an astronaut? Definitely got to be top of the game. You want to be like head of a big investment firm? You probably have to be top of the game and pretty cutthroat to make it there. But
Yeah.
if you want to explore what you want to do with your career and just kind of go off of vibes and see what might be successful in most of the corporate world, like I think you can afford to do that and also have fun on the side and still be successful. And in fact, the version of you that's having fun, I keep going back to the same theme, is going to be a better version of you that people will like, that people will want to give opportunities to. And so that's why I think being a well-rounded person is what I would lean more into if I could give that advice to my younger self.
Wow. Yeah, those were two. I feel like those are really good pieces of advice for our listeners. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I really appreciate you guys reaching out.
No,
Thank you. This was really fun.
yeah, it was a great conversation. Thanks so much.
Yeah, of course. And to our listeners, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Tune in next month for our next Presidential Scholar story.